don't wait until the discomfort becomes so great. Your body gives out, or you lose somebody that you really care about in your life before you make the changes that you probably already know you need to make, but have not been committed to.
Welcome to Evolve Leadership, the arena where high-achieving leaders are challenged to redefine their limits. My name is Angus Nelson. I grew up in the United States and I now live in Lisbon, Portugal. I'm an executive coach and I've spent my career advising and training leaders from startups to Fortune 500 companies. And here's what I've learned. An old, ineffective leadership framework will always keep you on a hamster wheel, consumed with work-life balance, burnout, and stress. Here on the show, each week we'll help you rethink the path to achievement. We'll help you discover new principles, new philosophies to the modern leader. Look, the world is relentlessly changing, demanding a new era of leaders. It's time to redefine your limits. So enter the arena, my friend. It's time to evolve. Welcome to the Evolvemen Leadership Show. Tim, I cannot wait to have you hear this interview with my friend today.
Yeah, you got to interview one of your good friends, Rahim Fazal, and you talked about reimagining. But I have a question. How did you meet Rahim anyway in the first place? How did you ever connect?
So I used to run an innovation association. It was all like Fortune 500 brands. We were hosting an event. I put all this curriculum together, blah, 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 blah. And he was one of the attendees. He was a member. He's like, I want to take you to one of my favorite places. And he ends up taking me down to the financial district in New York City.
Nice.
And we just ate just incredible food. But the one thing in particular I remember was this Vietnamese river crab. And it was served whole. And so you bite into it. And the way it was prepared, the shell became like crunchy and edible. And so you like threw it in your mouth and you're like, crunch, crunch. Oh my God, it was delish.
Yes. And next time we are there, you got to take me there. And you talked to him about reimagining. Tell me about that conversation.
So we talked about some different areas. So one in particular is he kind of disrupted with his newest company, education. So reimagining education, where he took students through his program and prepared them to become sales development representatives for, tech companies. So you didn't have to go to college. You could go through a program and immediately jump into, a $70,000, $80,000 job. And what does that look like for the future? We get into that. Number two, we talked about his startup world. Like he's, I think, on company number 4 that he's been a part of. And so he's going to talk about reimagining how he did his startups differently as he progressed and matured, became a better leader, et cetera. And then, of course, that led into a reimagining of self, how he sees himself and the work he did to become a better leader, to be able to be more, as he called, conscious. And I think it's a fascinating conversation. So I'm thrilled to be joined with Rahim Fazal, the founder of SV Academy. Rahim, he co-founded several startups, as I told you before, and he's been recognized as Forbes 30 under 30. He's got a revolutionary education and employment platform that trains individuals with the skills and knowledge needed to thrive in the tech industry. And he has this passion for democratizing access to opportunity and has dedicated his career to empowering individuals from diverse backgrounds to jump in and kind of fast forward them into the tech workforce. I'm super excited to have you guys meet him. This guy is committed to a future of education and employment like we've never experienced before. You'll hear more about it in just a second. Please welcome Rahim Fazal. Hey there, I'm talking to an old friend. My introduction to Vietnamese river crabs in New York City. Rahim, great to have you here. Dude, how are you?
Amazing. It's the last few months have been so great. Even though we're doing this virtually, I feel like I've reconnected with a lot of people that I have missed over the couple of years of COVID, chaos.
Dude, that's awesome. And yeah, always great to see your smiley face. While I was looking for something on my Google Drive, I came upon a contract from SV Academy with you and Joel from when you and I were first talking about, oh, could Angus help us
Oh,
in this
wow.
coaching role?
Wow. Yeah.
And flash forward, guess what I'm fucking doing? I'm coaching.
Amazing. I love it. It's not, it's so not surprising to me. I feel like there's a whole group of people who came into my life around that period of time who have been moving in this direction, many of them formally.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a connection with my business, SV Academy, but also some of my dearest friends, my sister, my wife, I've seen like over a period of 4 or 5 years kind of move into coaching roles and really, really absolutely loving it in all dimensions. So I guess I'm not surprised.
Well, thank you. And I would say, and this is a great setup actually for some of this conversation, because I believe why a lot of us who have gotten into coaching the way we have, whether you use the word coaching or advising or strategic, something or other, strategery, all that stuff comes from this place of self-awareness and emotional intelligence and having this kind of soft skill strength that to this day is now becoming more and more predominant as actually a core strength. And there's not enough leaders, particularly male species of leaders, who actually have a connection to self-awareness and emotional intelligence. So that's a great setup for today, because I want to talk to you about, you've done what, 4 companies?
Mm-hmm.
And each one of those probably has a Rahim, like one,
yes.
1.35, 2.7,
Totally.
all the way through.
Totally.
And so I want to start with kind of just real flyby 30,000 feet, each of those 4 steps. And I mean, the 4 companies plus time at Oracle. And what does that look or feel like, just real briefly? And then we'll kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, I think the punchline is a journey evolving from sourcing approval externally to sourcing approval from within.
Come on.
And so when I think about the first company, I was in my teens. I was in high school. I was in government housing. People didn't have high expectations of me. I didn't. My world was very small, but there was something I wanted that was greater than my environment. And so I hustled. I did whatever I needed to. I broke whatever rules were necessary. I hid the fact I was running the business from my parents until it was sold. And thankfully, it happened to be successful enough where we sold it before I graduated high school, and I could chalk that up as a big win in my life. Something I kind of put my mind to and achieved that felt very meaningful for me, right? Beyond kind of really giving me some financial means that I'd never had before. The second business I started right away, but now I was coming from a place of having some notoriety, some recognition, some expectations. I'd just been in the press and so on in that first business, kind of a local hometown hero, and then this business was now I kind of felt like a little celebrity in my little world, and I had some money, and it was about kind of living that dream. I grew up, listening to a lot of hip hop, and I felt like I was a rapper, right. Going to clubs and things like that, before before even being of age, and like just having a lifestyle that like I only saw, in music videos, basically.
Yeah.
And then the third company, which was Evolvemen, which ultimately I sold to Oracle, that I started, I moved to Silicon Valley. I feel like I was kind of moving from like a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond. Yeah, and once again, I had sort of a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove. And the stakes were higher. It was, there was more success in that, growth in that business and success in that business. So it was an intense experience, and kind of looking back on it reflectively, I'd say it was where it became very clear to me that there were certain things I was good at doing in my life, and I would say, that would be, setting a goal and achieving it. But the human skills, starting just from a place from within, like I was starting from a pretty low point, right? And I was never, that was not even conscious to, I wasn't even conscious to that until afterwards. Then in between the third and the fourth business, I started to ask myself these questions, like, hey, I thought it was going to be this huge outcome, and it was a good outcome, but it wasn't a huge outcome, and why? And I kind of looking at the responsibility that I had, instead of kind of pointing fingers at others. Yeah. And as I started that discovery, that led me to, I found a psychiatrist and started doing therapy twice a week while I was at Oracle, actually. Big shout out to Oracle that I had, I got the flexibility in my life to in my schedule, to prioritize that work. I started to open up more to my partner, my now wife, who was, as I said, feeling a draw towards coaching, and I guess I was her first client. And so became more of I started to open up my world to her a lot more. And then the third thing I did was I started to talk to friends of mine about these types of issues, and discovered, kind of came up with a whole new set of friends, and almost who were asking themselves the same questions. And I found this organization called Conscious Leadership. And there is a book called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leaders. And one of the co-authors, Diana Chapman, became my coach. And I joined my friends put a group together, and I joined a forum, with about 12 of us. And I did that while starting the fourth business. And I think as a result of starting from that place of, curiosity, deep curiosity around an introspection, like of self, I feel like the fourth business basically was like a manifestation of a lot of this energy, a lot of this inquiry. And so first of all, it's an education business. So I got very excited about, impact, creating social impact rather than just generating, dollars to hit quotas. Yeah. Two is I focused on a population, like serving a population of learners that are underserved in a variety of different ways, whether it's socioeconomically or geographically, or whether they have degrees or not have degrees, or are black, white, or anywhere in between. And thirdly, while it's focused on sales training, imbued within the curriculum, imbued within the organization that's delivering the curriculum, are a set of human-centered principles and thinking and ideals that I really want to see exist in the future of work. And so this business has probably been the hardest business, to kind of pull off and to get to a stage of scale. It's also been the most fulfilling.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly too, in that same realm, because you had these cohorts, there was a lot of, this wasn't software driven. There was a lot of education in those early days. You're disrupting the education system by creating a model that takes someone who knows nothing and putting them in a role where they're making 70, 80, or more, $1,000. By the way, the SDR, so sales
development
representatives. Yeah, that was kind of the main gist. Yeah. Now you've obviously refined since then, and you've got some software help with all of that. What have you. But what would you say to the disruption side? What kind of friction did you face? And again, looking into the future, what are opportunities that lie in this kind of education?
I think there are three lenses or, three dimensions to like answering this question. One is like through the eyes of the employers, which is where we started. If you remember, Angus, like when we started 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we were always saying that in order to kind of create this disruption, we need the employers to not just buy in, but actually drive the change. That's where the employment outcomes, that's where the money is coming from. I think the first thing was getting employers to appreciate that the old way of operating, which basically was devoid of training, right? And just kind of focusing on, call it, this homogenous, low-hanging fruit. I like to think about it as rich white male lacrosse player, right? Kind of tier one, and it's like tier one school, like, like red meat eating, crushing, like uses like language, like I crush this and I crush that. There were other ways, there were other communities, there were other profiles of talent out there that could drive growth in their organizations at the same level or better, and getting kind of comfortable with accepting that, because much of the establishment has come through that world and may identify with that themselves directly or kind of may kind of have seen patterns of success doing things in one way. So I'd say that was one thing. I'd say the other way was on the other side, the actual job seekers seeing that not just that investing in training can create more fulfilling outcomes, but actually seeing that the cognitive dissonance between how difficult these sales jobs can be, these human-centered jobs, and the payoff, 12, 24 months, 36 months down the road. Because many of us don't wake up, including many of us who come from underserved communities. Now, we may have likely have done some sales, some retail, worked in a mall, right? Had summer jobs, that kind of thing. May currently be doing it to, support our families. But many of us don't look at that work as our life's work. It's just a way to support yourself. And so sales, I think, a reimagination was needed, and continues to be needed. And I think the third thing is assessment. So in order to create kind of the type of transformation we want to see between learners and employers, and for it to be sustained, assessment of the human-centered skill development is like at the core of keeping the trains running. And assessing human-centered skills is difficult. It's easy to evaluate someone's coding ability, and you can do that programmatically. But it's really hard to assess someone's human skills progress, and they're both their baseline and kind of hitting certain milestones. It's just not something that we've done a great job of in education or in workforce training. And it's a core part of making the whole machine work. And I'd say maybe the hardest of the three pieces I mentioned.
So that's where I want to go in this next step is, you said there were some core things that were both internal with the programming of the education, in addition to the programming of the company as a culture. What are some of those pillars of the human nature, the human side?
Let me just pause for a second to say this. There is one trait that you will find in every successful leader, no matter their industry, no matter their role. And that trait is action. And we want to inspire ambitious leaders like you to bet on yourself and take action on those audacious goals that you see in your heart. That's why we created our 90-day accelerator. It's a results-driven, battle-tested framework designed specifically for high-performing leaders like you to get unstuck and propel you towards your goals. And in just 90 days, you won't even recognize the person you used to be. To be a part of this elite community, go to evolveleadership.org. Now, back to the show.
Well, as I mentioned, the 15 commitments of conscious leaders, that body of work that has really influenced like Rahim 4.0, right? The first two commitments, the first one is around 100% responsibility, and the second one is around curiosity. And so when I think about those two commitments, I see those as like universal, in the sense that they're kind of it's like age old wisdom, and also very directly relevant to being successful in entry level sales in a highly competitive business environment. So the first one is 100% responsibility. When I look back at my own life, or I look at the worlds of our graduates who are going into these sales positions, when you're working in a professional environment, as an example, a highly competitive, high growth startup, there's so much change that's happening. And in the sales role, as an example, for example, even right now, with a softening of like the macros, the macro economy, you could have like the default mode, maybe, I pick up the phone and I reach out to a cold prospect and I get hung up on, and then I repeat it and I get hung up on 10 times. And then I send 20 emails out and none of those emails get responded to. And a default mode might be like, well, the world sucks. The economy sucks. These companies suck. My manager has given me a crappy territory. They don't train me well. I have to also like work. I have a second job I have to do, or I have to caretake for my family. There are lots of different things that you can be at the effect of, right? And the view that we try to espouse ourselves, because like this is such a journey individually as much as it is for what we try to train the community on is your best self comes out when you're taking 100% of your responsibility, no less and no more. And so what might come up when you take that view is that, well, could I have been better prepared for that call? Like, could I have done more research? Or it could be, do I need to just double the amount of activity that's necessary and reach out to 20 people instead of 10 people to get, just because things have changed out there? And that's what the world is telling me. It's what the universe is telling me. And then I think the second piece around curiosity, I think it's the detachment from wanting to be right. And I think about that for our community in terms of there's many ways in which it comes up, but for example, a lot of like interpersonal issues in kind of a high stakes startup environment where if you're not taking 100% responsibility, you may very well believe that I am like this. You might say like this product sucks.
Yeah.
Like this product cannot sell. I know it. Like I've talked to 10 people. I've talked to 100 people. I've talked to 1,000 people. It doesn't sell. And if I even zoom out and I think about my own life as an example, like this comes up a lot for me where I have to push myself to take the opposite point of view and to see why something does work. So the macro economy right now, well, this sucks. And there's a lot of reasons to say that it sucks. I can also notice that like that the stories that the economy sucks and are bad for business have a grip on me. Like there's a strong grip I have. And when I notice something like that, I notice attachment. I notice a story has a strong grip. I immediately try to loosen it and start to say, well, where actually might there be the gift right now? And that same thing that we try to train at SV Academy. Like if you get one rejection, where might the gift be there? Just detaching yourself from wanting to be so right for the world. to be to operate in a certain way, and then constantly sort of being displeased that it's not working exactly the way that you want to, and just being more fluid with it.
So let me ask you this in that same context, because we all know this, whether it's in sales and marketing, a lot of it is a product of how I see myself in the situation, just like you described. We can play the victim mentality because these issues, these surrounding things, oh, this is why, oh, my product sucks, oh, da, da, da. But in reality is, am I coming from a place of victim mentality? Am I at lack, deficit, whatever? Now, when I show up to this, sales call, I'm already sabotaging myself energetically because I'm not going to have excitement about my product or about my thing. So let me take that into leadership, because we know that can happen from a sales side, but where are the moments when you've had to like dig deep, or maybe you just went into that dark night and hit that wall of shit, now what? How do you see yourself in those challenging moments?
Well, I think between companies 3 and 4, there was a lot of work that I did along the lines of that theme. So, as I mentioned, I had a company that was incredibly high flying. It was one of the top like cloud companies in the category. We're just growing like crazy, and as mentioned, we had a good outcome, but not a great outcome. And I thought about that. Why? What happened? Some of my competitors did fabulously well. Same product, same general approach. And for the longest time, I would as the victim, the stories I would tell myself were around how I was at the effect of everything around me. And, in a startup, there's tons of different things that you can point to and say, that has failed me, that has failed me, that has failed me. Could be an investor or board member, or could be the market, changed quickly on me. It could be that hire that I made really screwed me up, on and on and on and on. And I was noticing I was just stuck in this like loop of victimhood. And I don't know, like, the only way I was able to get out of it was to move from my mind to my body and start to recognize, wow, one, I have a body. Like I forget that all the time. Right. But just noticing like how it felt in my body when I would like be in victimhood on the issue. And the stories that I had around victimhood were like really strong and deeply entrenched. And so they like intellectually felt good. Right. They felt safe. But I never felt good in my body. And until I made that connection, I was unable to shift.
Yeah.
And once I started actually tuning into like how I was feeling in my body, from that place, I was able to say, I don't like these butterflies that I feel here. I don't like the tenseness that I feel like every day. It just doesn't feel good. And I want to feel differently.
Yeah.
And I think and it sort of started from there and worked itself out.
That's rich. And now, flash forward, you're running a team where now the systems are in place. By the way, my contract said February 2017.
Okay. So
let's put some time in there, dude.
That's crazy.
You've been on a ride.
That's crazy. Yeah. Because we do cohorts, our program has cohorts, and they start, every so often on a routine calendar. And we've now had over 100 of those cohorts, and February would have been our first cohort.
Yeah.
So that is that's like an incredible ride for sure.
Yeah. So you think about, the owner, the founder, the boss, the chief that you were then. Now here we are, 6 years later, almost. Yeah. So
5.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to measure months. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Who's the guy on the screen now versus that guy glossy-eyed, ambitious, and naive?
I started my response to your question about the journeys across the 4 startups with the framing of moving from where I sourced approval from, starting with sourcing approval externally to sourcing approval from within. And another word for approval for me, a synonym, is love. And so I think, where was I 5.5 years ago? Who was that leader? And how that leader has grown on that question, on that concept. And I feel I feel like in some ways to be fair, I think I've made a ton of progress in where I source approval, where I source love from. The more progress I make, the more I realize how much more there is for me to go.
Yeah.
And not in like a pessimistic way, but really in like an optimistic, like my expectations for how rich life could be, how vibrant, how juicy it could be is way bigger. Like my vision for myself is way, way bigger. And I don't mean in terms of like monetarily, like, because I've always had this, I want to, make X amount of money and take my company public, and not that kind of stuff, which is like more extrinsic, but more in terms of what it feels like, the energy I feel, like the life force I feel, like showing up every day in whatever may be happening in this crazy ass world, whether it's, at work or with my family. And one of the things I was telling you in our pre-call time was that I now have 2 kids. 5.5 years ago, I didn't. And that's been a profound change for me. And part of what happened when I went to go see this psychiatrist in between companies 3 and 4 is moving from like fear to excitement on the question of having a family. And I remember his name is Dr. Seymour Boorstein. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago. Just a wonderful human, wonderful soul. I remember him asking me, well, what if your life's purpose was to raise the next Gandhi? And it was a way of like capturing a vision for myself and a magnitude of a vision that was like way different than who I was, when I started SV Academy. And so I'd say the one you see here is someone who is not just on the journey of love and where I source love, but also one that has a much greater vision for himself and sees like far more possibilities for my work in this life than I did when I started.
Love it. And while you were talking, one of my children was out on the patio, was sticking her head around the patio just inside my view. I'm out the window and she's like waving at me.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, bro. So let me turn this to the contagion piece of this, meaning the whole reason why we exist, with Evolvemen and helping male leaders step out of whatever BS story they tell themselves that doesn't allow them the opportunity to grow and to take on growth mindsets and to understand some of the things you've just described. What would you want to tell the guy who is head down, work hard, don't feel kind of leadership? What is the thing that you would tell that man?
I would say, are you truly recognizing the full cost, the full cost of what may be possible for you, what you may be able to create in this world as a consequence of this way of being? And I think change happens in 2 ways. Either your vision increases or the costs increase. And I think for many people, including my mentor, I had a mentor at Oracle, my competitor. He was my competitor in my third business. Both companies got acquired by Oracle at the same time. We became part of the same group, and he did fabulously well in all aspects. Externally, materially, and sadly, he passed away like a couple of years after the acquisition. And I look at his example, and I just remind myself of how short life is, and I don't want to be that person. And if you're hearing this audio, this podcast right now, don't wait until the discomfort becomes so great. For example, your body gives out, or you lose somebody that you really care about in your life, before you make the changes that you probably already, if you're listening to this, probably already know you need to make, but have not been committed to. And the best way I can think of really kind of helping to get you there is to help you tune into the real cost of not making a change.
And by that, we understand from a business construct that we're like, oh, opportunity costs. We have to move, or we have to invest, or we have to grow, we have to innovate. We have this, but what we don't realize so often is that the opportunity cost is also what we're missing out on by not connecting to that internal source that you described, that internal love, where I always say that, guys, our biggest trouble is the compensation we make for this feeling of not being worthy, not deserving, or not having what it takes.
For sure. Wow.
And so in this place of pursuit for validation to compensate for that empty, hollow, apathetic feeling that we wake up every day with.
Yeah.
And we don't have the self-awareness or the acknowledgement that what you're feeling is a signal, a sign. And you think, because you're so isolated as a dude, you think this is normal. Oh, everyone. Yeah. And then you get together with other apathetic, miserable leaders, and they're all feeling like, yeah, me too. And you're like, oh, normal. We're all supposed to hate our lives.
Yeah.
That is not the way it's supposed to be.
I think
it'll be different, right?
Well, and this is why I think, 2.5 years ago when we went into shelter in place with COVID, I remember how down I felt in that moment. And there's still like a bitterness I feel about sort of how things sort of changed so quickly everywhere. But I also heard more from people I care deeply about and was in connection with, about kind of reevaluating, like using that moment of time to go like, oh my God, well, maybe the stories and the scripts that I've been told like all along, maybe they're not the represent the best set of possibilities for me. Maybe there is actually, maybe I can be happier. And finding I think a lot of people made a lot of shifts in those moments. And, I see that with you as well. And I see that with others that, have asked themselves the same question. And that's again where I go, like, don't wait for another economic downturn. Don't wait for another pandemic. Don't wait for, something kind of cataclysmic like that to happen again before, you really take stock of the choices you're making in life. We have every moment as an opportunity to choose what we prioritize and how we live our lives, and don't let even another moment go by. You don't have to.
Come on. You heard it here, guys. You're listening. We're speaking to you. Your intuition is telling you. If this struck a chord with you, do something. Take action. Whatever that might be. As we wrap up another episode of Evolve Leadership, thank you so much for taking time to invest in you. If there's to be any sustainable growth in your company or even in your relationships, you must grow first. And it's what I love to do for leaders. to help them grow, to challenge their thinking, sharpen self-awareness, to instill an unshakable confidence, and ultimately, upgrade their sense of self. And we do this through our proprietary method called Agile EQ Plus, where we're leveraging agile leadership and emotional intelligence. We provide our signature training for individuals, and for businesses, we've designed a unique curriculum for company-wide learning and development. If you'd like to learn more about our training or to schedule a call, you can simply go to evolveleadership.org. And until next time, stay driven, keep climbing, and never stop evolving.